In 1934, Australian gold prospectors pushed into the central highlands of Papua New Guinea, expecting to find primitive farmers, but walked into a living nightmare. Emerging from the tall pit grass, a razor-sharp wild sugarcane that covers the mountain valleys, came dozens of silent, bone-white human skeletons. Their skin was caked in jet-black charcoal and stark river clay, moving with terrifying military precision. European observers quickly labeled the practice a sing-sing, an outsider term used to describe festive gatherings. Photographs of men painted like human corpses spread across international magazines, framed as exotic folklore performed to entertain visitors or honor ancestral spirits. The official historical record recorded a peaceful, decorative tradition. It was a comfortable explanation. It was also completely wrong. These were not performers. This was never a dance. In the highland villages of the Chimbu people, no one ever applied this clay for a festival, and no outsider was ever meant to witness it. The paint was prepared in total secrecy, deep in the rainforest, only when war was declared. If this was merely a harmless cultural celebration, why did the Chimbu only paint their bodies when enemy armies crossed their borders? To understand why the paint existed, you have to look at the landscape. The Simbu province is a brutal maze of near-vertical mud cliffs, razor-thin mountain ridges, and deep river gorges. Flat, fertile land is almost non-existent. Centuries ago, as populations grew across the valleys, land was not just valuable, land was life. When a neighboring clan ran out of soil to feed its people, they did not negotiate. They marched across the valley walls to take new land by force. Terrifying territorial wars broke out across the region. In kinetic combat, the rules were simple and merciless. Men fought with heavy hardwood clubs, long bamboo-tipped spears, and stone axes. Battles were bloody, brutal, and long. For the Chimbu clans, a terrifying crisis arrived. Surrounding tribal coalitions had formed massive military alliances, outnumbering the Chimbu warriors by overwhelming margins. In traditional hand-to-hand combat, numerical superiority is an absolute law. The math was simple. If the Chimbu met their enemies on an open field with spears and shields, every Chimbu man would die. Their homes would be burned. Their culture would be erased. They could not forge stronger weapons. They could not recruit more men. Standard warfare meant guaranteed extinction, so the elders made a radical decision. They abandoned physical force entirely and targeted the one universal vulnerability in the human brain that weapons cannot defend against. The Chimbu did not rely on chance. They engineered a multi-layered psychological weapon built on two distinct materials taken directly from the earth. The first material was wood charcoal, burned and crushed into a fine black dust. The warriors mixed the charcoal with water and rubbed it over every inch of their bare skin. This was not decorative. In the dim, dappled light of the dense jungle canopy, a dark human body reflects light and creates recognizable shadows. Jet black charcoal acts as a light absorber, erasing the natural highlights of human muscles, shoulders, and faces. It effectively turned the warrior invisible against the dark forest backdrop. Over this invisible black canvas, they applied the second layer, pure kaolin clay, a bright white mineral-rich clay harvested from deep riverbeds. But they did not paint random lines. Using their own anatomy as a precise blueprint, they painted high-contrast white clay across their jawlines, ribs, spine, arm bones, and leg bones. The objective was to create omo-yon, a native term that translates to the walking dead, the physical reanimation of ancestral spirits returning from the grave. When an observer looks at a painted Chimbu warrior in the wild, the human brain struggles to process two contradictory facts at once. The black charcoal erases the human shape, while the white clay forces the eye to see only a moving, fully formed human skeleton. It was an optical masterpiece, but an optical illusion alone does not stop an army holding spears. The true genius of the Chimbu was how they deployed these skeletons onto the battlefield. Anthropological field studies conducted by researchers like Paula Brown and Roy Rappaport uncovered the exact military protocol. The Chimbu never marched into open sunlight. They waited for the early morning fog to settle thick and heavy across the narrow mountain passes, the exact choke points where invading armies had to march in single file. As the invading coalition rounded the slippery cliff edge, they did not hear war cries or pounding drums. There was absolute silence. Then, slowly stepping out of the dense white mist, a line of silent, twitching skeletal specters blocked the path. The warriors moved with unnatural, jerky motions, mimicking the stiff gait of corpses rising from the dirt. What happened next was not a battle, it was a total neurological collapse. In highland spiritual belief, living men can be fought with spears and overcome with numbers. But ancestral spirits returning from the dead represent a cosmic breach of reality. You cannot stab a ghost, you cannot overpower a curse. The sudden visual shock triggered an immediate sympathetic nervous system overload in the invading soldiers. Deep brain structures hijacked their decision-making. Fear bypassed logic entirely. Massive, heavily armed invading armies broke formation, dropped their weapons, and trampled their own men in a desperate attempt to flee. An outnumbered tribe had just won a major territorial war. They lost no land, they suffered 0 casualties, and they did it without throwing a single spear. For nearly a century, Western literature classified the Chimbu skeleton paint as an exotic curiosity, a primitive folk dance preserved for tourists in exotic photograph albums. What colonial observers mistook for a superstitious ritual was actually one of the most sophisticated, non-lethal defense technologies ever recorded in human history. Facing complete destruction by superior physical force, an isolated society decoded human psychology, weaponized perception, and turned raw fear into a shield. They proved a timeless truth about human nature. True mastery in conflict is not the capacity to inflict violence, but the intelligence to weaponize perception so deeply that war itself becomes unnecessary. Next time the college kids down the street play loud music past 2 a.m., forget calling the cops. Mix up some charcoal and riverbed mud, stand motionless under the streetlight right outside their living room window, and let their nervous system do the work.